Díomh chuirde, is Mr. Aisling, Agus Siobhán, agus Tommy de Biolib chun Q&A inmh le Bitesize Irish. Chun stáú Siobhán?
Gan agus tú héin Aisling.
Go branis, Tommy de Bioníag sturm Ellen.
See sin.
All right, so welcome to the Q&A this evening. We have some great questions after coming in throughout the last week or so we're going to get right to those. Siobhán, would you like to take the first one?
Okay, so the first one here is from Olga in Moscow, Russia. And she says, I would appreciate help and advice in picking a documentary or movie in the Irish language to watch. I really enjoyed the Year in Inishmore documentary, which is available on YouTube. It is in Irish with English subtitles. Thank you for all the good work you do. Guramina Mahagulga. We do have some recommendations for you indeed. So as you said, it was on YouTube, and more likely than not, that documentary was originally broadcast on TG4. So TG4 is the Irish language TV channel, and it has some great documentaries as well as other types of TV shows in Irish, mostly with English subtitles, sometimes with Irish subtitles even. And TG4, this is here, it is TG4, and you can go to tg4.ie to watch it on its player. So you don't need to actually access it on your TV. You can watch it online. And of course, some of those documentaries have been uploaded to YouTube. So if you just type in on YouTube, TG4 documentaries, it'll bring up lots of documentaries with English subtitles. Now, some that I saw there was one called Hukeri. So that's one about boats in the Connemara region in Galway, and it has English subtitles. And also there was one more historical one, and that's about Douglas Hyde, the first president of the Irish Free State. And so you get lots of different ones. You've got ones about more cultural things, and then more historical, lots of different types of documentaries, ones about gardening, so every lifestyle ones. So there's lots and lots on TG4, and they've got dramas too. So you're not just limited to documentaries. Have you any recommendations there, Aisling?
Yeah, TG4 player is brilliant. I used to live abroad myself, and I used to really miss not having TG4 on TV. So the player is brilliant. You can watch it from anywhere in the world. And the documentaries are excellent. Some of the best documentaries actually on TV. They're really, really great. And they have documentaries on all sorts of things, not just things to do with Irish language, like you were saying, Siobhán. So some of my favorites anyway, there's a gorgeous one called Queenie on Laskead. So that translates to memories from the Blaskets. And there was one island off the coast of West Kerry called the Blasket Islands, and it was evacuated by people who lived there in the 50s, but still some of the people who live there are alive today. So this documentary just kind of goes through what life was like on the island up until it was evacuated. So that's a gorgeous one, Queenie on Laskead. But there's also some soaps on TG4, like Rust na Rún, which is a very scandalous soap if you're into that kind of drama as well. So TG4 player is really, really great, Olga. So hopefully you find something there now to help you a bit with your resources. So hopefully those helped you.
Yeah, and there's Rust na Rún for you there.
Exactly.
So you can just search that on YouTube, or of course go to the TG4 website and you should be able to watch it too.
Exactly.
So, Guramahagat the Kesh Olga, and Guramahagat Aisling as the Hudja multi-freshen. So right, so lovely. So would you like to ask the next question there, Aisling?
Absolutely. So we have a lovely question here from Michael Swanson and Dialects Mihal. So he says, I wanted to know a bit about the history of the Irish language, where it came from and what parts of the culture have changed it. And I'd like to know what your favourite Irish word is. So that's probably where we should start, Siobhán. So what's your favourite Irish word?
So I would say Strelja is at least one of them. It's hard to pick just one, to be honest, but Strelja is a lovely one. Well, it's a fun little word to say, and it's a handy one because it means like a kind of, you could say, a foolish grin of sorts. That's what Australia is. So there it is, there written up, Australia. And it's just a big grin, and it's kind of like a silly grin. So and I've often heard it used as well, even in English. And when people speak in English, they say, look at your man and the big Australia on him, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
With Australia on him. So that's the word Australia. And
it's lovely with Irish. I think there's a lot of words that have come over into English that are hard to translate sometimes. There might not be one word for it. So you hear people in Ireland using words that have come directly from Irish. That's a great word now. My favourite one is samóg. So I only heard this one probably about 2 years ago. I'd never heard it before, but it kind of means like a lazy person. So if you're feeling a bit lazy, you're not really bothered to do anything, you'd say, oh, I'm a bit of a samóg today, tá mé a homóg, enough. So I really like that one. I think it's very applicable to my life anyway. So we'll go back to your question. So Michael, this is a really interesting question, and I think you could probably spend a whole hour talking about this, and there's university modules on this and the kind of evolution of the language and the culture. So we'll try and touch on, we both kind of had a brainstorm about it and thought of our what we think, I suppose, has changed the language and things that have influenced it. So it's thought that the Irish language evolved from Celtic, the Celtic language, but there's no written proof of the Celtic language anywhere. So that's kind of a theory, because there's an umbrella of Celtic languages. So there's Welsh and Irish and Scots Gaelic, and there's some French languages and Spanish languages as well that are under that umbrella. And it's a part of the Indo-European family of languages as well. So it's then evolved over time with influence from other languages like Latin and French and German and Spanish and things like that. And then in terms of what aspects have changed the culture, I suppose colonization was a big thing. So before colonization, there used to be fillas and druids and tyranny. So there'd be very powerful families in different parts of Ireland, and they would have a filla, which was like a poet or kind of an entertainer, and there'd be druids as opposed to any religious figures that would kind of people would go to them for medicinal advice and things like that. And then a lot of that changed with colonization, and also I suppose globalization now is changing a lot of parts of the culture too. But it's a very complicated question. So what would your take be on that, Siobhán?
Well, I suppose you could break it down a bit, but definitely there's been a lot of influence over the years, and I think one of the easier ways, I think, of wrapping your head around it is breaking it down the way most scholars have broken it down historically, and that's to start off with Old Irish and Gaeilge, and that's 6th to 9th century. Now, what was there before that? It's believed, though, that some form of Irish or Celtic or whatever came about to Ireland about the year 300 BC. But of course, there's how to be sure of that, I have no idea. But that's what some scholars say anyhow. But what the more concrete things, though, come from the time when people began, well, of course, it was Ogham. And then about the 5th century onwards, the Latin font was adopted from mostly that would have come to Ireland by Christian missionaries. So of course that's how you got the Latin there. And of course there would have been possibly some trading or some sort of communications with Roman Britain before that. So that would have added the Latin influence to Old Irish. So that's about that time, the 6th, 19th century. Now, an interesting thing is there's a lot of historical events, major historical events that have changed how Irish was spoken and how it's structured. So when you think of the 6th and 19th century, what's the major historical events that were going on at the time? And people would think of, I suppose, the first thing off the top of their heads would be Vikings. And that's how you get the Scandinavian influence. And that's why across Europe there are some similar words. And they would have all originated, some of these similar words would have originated from the language that the Vikings spoke. So that's one thing. So that would have been the 6th, 19th century. Then you move on to Meon Gaeilge, that's Middle Irish, as you can see, the 9th to the 12th century. And that, like, when you think about it, what was going on at that time, what happened, so that's also kind of mostly influenced. That would be the one now that would be mostly influenced by the Vikings, to be honest. And of course also by the influence from the continent, because you've got monasteries popping up and stuff like that, and there was a lot of focus there on education and learning, and you had a lot of written manuscripts. Of course, we've got Laura Canonish, the Book of Kells, one of the most famous illuminated manuscripts to come from such an era. And so then you move on to Nua Gaeilge Clásaiceach, or early modern Irish. That's 12th to 17th. Now this is where the Norman influence comes in. So you had the Norman invasion in the 12th century, and that influenced Irish, bringing in Norman names, Norman words, of course, and more French. That's where you get a lot of words in Irish, and especially names like my own, Siobhán or Siobhán, apparently originated from the Norman name. And what would have been, I think, an older version of the present day Jean in French. So you get a lot of that. And then, of course, you have the modern Irish we have to this day from the 17th century onwards, and a Nua Gaeilge Dhéanach, and that would, of course, been influenced a lot by of course, the flight of the Earls and the power changes and British influence. And then as we come nearer to our own time, technological influences and immigration, emigration, and globalization and everything under the sun. So that's why you have all these new words coming in from English and everywhere under the sun, really. So that's how it changed over time, and those would be, I suppose, a very broad sense of how the language changed.
Yeah, it's great as well, though, that it's such an old language, but it's managed to kind of adapt and keep up with whatever has happened along the way. So that was a great summary of it all, Siobhán. I'm very impressed with that. Very good. Okay, so we have another one here from Fraser in Edinburgh. So do you want to go through this one?
Grand. I was wondering if you could explain why leishan, with the, is used when saying I listened to the story, éistim leis an scéal. Is this the usual way for to the to be said where it is not about travel, gji? So do you have any ideas about that, Aisling?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. And I think this is something that can be applied to a few languages, that sometimes certain verbs just take specific prepositions. So this éist always takes le. It always takes that preposition. So you don't say, we would say listening to in English, and to in Irish isn't necessarily le. Le is often with. But in Irish, you just say listening with the radio. So agéisteach leis an radio. And the reason that it's leishan is because you can't say le and then the article. You can't say le an. You have to say leis an. Okay. So that's just, I think they call it a phrasal verb, when the verb always takes a preposition after it. You see it in French and Spanish and a lot of other languages too. So this is just an example of those. You'd never say éist go di or éist go. It's éist le rodégant. So hopefully that helps a bit. Would you agree with that, Siobhán?
Oh, definitely. And I suppose it's just people think there's, so if you just speak English, you're just used to saying listening to, I'm listening to, listen to me. You just to, but why is it to? It could be anything else. It could be listen with. It could be listen on. It could be anything. It just happens to be in English that it's to. So it's the same in Irish. It's le, and it's similar. So I think another example in English is how you look at something. But in older English, you come across looking upon, but no one would say that today. But it seems that in English that has changed. The preposition has changed there. So in a way, these things, they're just there so things make sense. It mightn't always be the most logical thing, but it's just to remember that after éist we have le. Yeah. So, and then before the on, you say leishan. So le on just doesn't sound right. You just say leishan. It just makes life easier, I guess, or just the way things are.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, what you say about English, it's listening to, and sometimes that happens if you try and just directly translate something. You think, okay, it must be to, so that's go. But that can be kind of the trap you fall into if you try and directly translate. So often Google Translate isn't the best thing to go to if you're looking for something like that. So yeah, hopefully that helps now clear it up a bit for you. All right, so the next one here is from Betty in Chicago. So hello, Betty. So she has a question about the pronunciation. So I'll see an Irish song and learn the tune, but it's so easy to get lost. A soldier's song, for instance, I'd love to learn it in Irish. I seem to fall behind and have to skip to the next phrase. It's like I leave out words. Frustrating. So what's your answer to Betty, Siobhán?
All right. So that's great that you're making such an effort to learn Betty and you're persevering. Now, the first thing I'd recommend for getting the hang of Irish pronunciation is, well, it's part of our course, and that's Crack Irish Pronunciation. And that's part of the Bitesize Irish course. So the thing is with that, it breaks down into different parts. Now, people often think that Irish is very illogical when it comes to its spelling, but it's actually quite the opposite. A dyslexic man said to me this morning that he finds it easier to spell in Irish, even though he's not a native Irish speaker. He's only been learning for the past few years. He finds it easier to spell Irish words than English words, and he's a native English speaker because it's way more logical. Mm-hmm. So once you crack that code, and that's exactly why it's called Crack Irish Pronunciation, because it just breaks it down. And once you know what sounds every few letters together, like groups of letters make or whatever, you'll know. And of course there are exceptions like everything, but it's pretty logical. It's pretty logical. So that's a first for pronunciation. So if you go onto the Bitesize Irish website and go to our memberships page, you will see there that you or just even take a taster, and there is I believe a short lesson on pronunciation within the taster. My memory serves me right, but other than that, for the full Crack Irish Pronunciation course, you need to get a membership, but that's available on the website and you can check it out there. Now, other than that, since we're talking about Óra Naveen, the soldier's song, that is the anthem of Ireland, what I would recommend is for you to watch a video we did. I believe it must be a few years ago now, and I'll post a link in the blog post that's linked in the description box of this video. So we did a video, myself, I did a video a while back about that, and it goes through it line by line, and it's read out slowly with the most common pronunciation. Of course, it's very, the pronunciation seems to be very kind of strictly like one specific dialect, it seems. But I guess it needs to be like that for a song, because then if people are pronouncing everything very differently, it'll just sound weird. So since it's the national anthem, it does have kind of specific Munster sounding pronunciations. So you can check it out there. So that's if you just even search on YouTube Óra Naveen and then Bitesize Irish, you'll find the video, but I'll also link it on the blog post. So have you any ideas there, Aisling?
Perfect. No, I think that was brilliant. I think another thing that might be useful is Tanglin.ie. So that is a dictionary. It has an Irish to English one, an English to Irish one. It also has a folklore biog, so it's an Irish to Irish one. So if you want to get a synonym for something, you can look at it there. But they also have a pronunciation database, so you can listen to words in every dialect, which I think is so useful, because it's kind of something you're seeing now more and more on online dictionaries, but up to a few years ago that wasn't really an option. So it's brilliant, really. So if you go onto Tanglin, go into that and you have your word, and not every word there has the option to see how it's pronounced, but most of them do. And then you go in there and you can listen to it in Munster, Connacht and Ulster, and then away you go. So it's great. So that's definitely something you might be able to use as well. And I think the same is on folklore.ie as well. So yeah, hopefully that will help you now a bit in your pronunciation, and fair play for trying to learn songs as well. That's a nice way to learn the language too. Okay, so we'll move on again. And we have a question here from Darren in Savannah. So he says, how do you know what form of this to use in Irish? It can be she, seo, a seo, or those words split apart around another separate word. English is easy when using the word this. Irish is a bit complicated. Thanks, Darren. So we'll hand this over to our tagascóir, our Sanoli Gramadi.
So the word we're discussing here is seo. And now the thing is with seo in Irish, that is the word this. But the thing is you need to use the pronoun usually with seo unless you're going to use a noun. So it's like saying in English, instead of saying this is hot, in Irish you have to say this is hot. So that's one of the main things that cause confusion around the use of seo. Now the thing is that the word for it, she, is the masculine, or she is the feminine form. That can change. You can lose the s, you see. So you use she in a sentence when the pronoun is the subject. So what that means is when she is who or what is performing the action. So let's look at an example of that. So in this sentence here we have rinne she dochar. This did harm. Rinne she. The this is the thing that did it. It's the thing that performed the action. So that's why it's she. Rinne she seo dochar. Rinne she dochar would be it did harm, or could even be he did harm. But rinne she seo dochar, this did harm. So it's just to bear in mind that it did the action. That's the important thing here. We have another example of such a sentence, and that's tá sé seo go deas. This is nice. Because take away the seo, and you want, if you're just saying it is nice, tá sé go deas. So perhaps the first thing to do is to ask yourself, how do I say it instead of this? So instead of trying to say this is nice, ask yourself, how do I say it is nice? Tá sé go deas. So all you need to do then is pop in the seo after the pronoun, and then you'll have this. Tá sé seo go deas. Now we're going to look at it in another sense now. When it's not she, but rather a. So use a when the pronoun is the object. That is, the pronoun is being affected by the action. So that's the thing that's having the action done to it. So we're going to look at some examples of that as well. So here we have rinne Sean a seo. Sean did this. So a, that's the thing that's having something done to it, whatever Sean has done to it. So it's in that's the thing in the first one, rinne sé seo dochar, and that one, this did the harm. In this one, it has had something done to it. So rinne sé seo dochar, Sean did this. Rinne Sean is seo. So again, like the thing about this is nice, this is nice, ask yourself, how do you say Sean did it? If you can say Sean did it, you'll be well able to say Sean did this. So rinne Sean a, that's Sean did it. Rinne Sean a seo. So just pop in the seo after the pronoun. And we've got another example of that. Jich me seo. I ate this. So again, it's something that has something done to it. It got eaten. So jich me a, I ate it. Jich me seo, I ate this. And perhaps we have a few other examples. Yeah, so céir dé, what is it? Céir dé seo, what is this? And then when you're not using a pronoun, well, obviously you don't have the she or the a, uncouple seo, this coat. So you just, it's simple. It's like in English here. You just use the seo after the noun that you're talking about. So have you anything to add there, Aisling?
No, that was brilliant. That was an excellent way to describe it. I think sometimes having learned the language in school, I think sometimes Irish people struggle to explain grammatical things because you just know that's how it is. So that was an excellent way to describe it. And I hope that helps you a bit now, Darren.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on now. We have one from Kimberly in Australia. And she tells us a lovely story here about the first time she came to Ireland and felt a really strong connection to the place. So her main question was that I'm interested in the different dialects of Irish. Listening to Siobhán, Owen, and in the past Gabrielle, you all have different accents. Are these accents or dialects? Could you clear that up for me? I know that Siobhán is from Galway but lives in Tipperary from the information she has shared about herself, and I know that Owen is from Limerick. Do these places reflect your accents or dialects? Is it correct that there are 3 accents or dialects, Connemara, Ulster and Munster? And which pronunciations do you teach in Bitesize Irish? Okay, so let's have a look here. So yes, nowadays there are 3 main dialects. I think this is a lovely question. I love talking about dialects because I think it's one of the richest things about the Irish language is the dialects that we have. So nowadays there are 3 main dialects. So in the past, when Irish was more widely spoken across the whole country, there were different dialects depending on where you are. And still now within the Munster Gaeltacht, for example, there will be different variations of the same dialect, but they are generally speaking a Munster dialect. So nowadays there are 3. We have Munster, we have Connacht, and we have Ulster. So Cuig Moin, Cuig Connachta, and Cuig Olle. Okay. And you were asking as well, could most speakers kind of understand each other if you were speaking a different dialect? And I think this is kind of something people joke about a lot, that the Ulster dialect is the hardest one to understand. But generally, most people can understand each other from different dialects. There might be a word or 2 here and there that you might not know or might be different. For example, in the Connacht dialect, they say feckim for I see. But in the Munster dialect, I would always say keem. So that's C-I for the M, keem. Okay. So would you agree to that point about the kind of people understanding each other, Siobhán? Just sometimes there's different words here and there that you might say, oh, what does that mean?
Definitely. It's like, I would say, I'd compare it to the differences between American, British, Irish and Australian English. If you're not used to listening to one, it'll take it a while to tune in. And they might use some slang that you don't already know, but it's not a completely different language or anything. You'll get the hang of it sooner rather than later. It's the same with Irish. If you know one dialect, you'll know the others. Yeah. And there was a question there in regards our dialects or accents. So it is a bit complex. Like myself, I would say let's call it foundation dialect is Connacht. But I spent a few years in Kerry, in the Kerry Gaeltacht, so in Cork. So that would have affected my Irish. I've spent an awful lot of time listening to Ulster speakers. So that I would also have picked up, I'm sure, some Ulsterisms there. And the fact that I live in Tipperary and I apparently have a fairly Tipperary accent in English, I'm sure that affects the type of accent I have in Irish as well. So there's a mixture there. And I think most people do have some sort of mixture in any language. I'm sure if you're Irish, let's say, and your mother comes from Cork and your father's from Donegal, it would somehow morph into one. And if you've been raised in Dublin, let's say, you might have a mostly Dublin accent, but you'll probably have some Corkisms in there and some Donegalisms or something. So this sort of thing, this happens in Irish as well. It a lot depends on where you've been raised, what your parents speak, lots of different things. And so it's the same in Irish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think especially because a lot of people now that would speak Irish regularly might not necessarily have grown up in a Gaeltacht, so they wouldn't have been exposed to one Canuint or dialect their whole life, and they'd learn in different places. Their teachers in school, like my teacher in school had a Connacht dialect, but then when I went to college, they all had Munster dialects, and I learned a lot in the Gaeltachtaí in Waterford and in Kerry, so that kind of added to my Munster dialect. So I think it's kind of more of a free-flowing thing now, where you can adapt as many dialects as you'd like. And it's actually quite interesting because in the past, the different dialects were so diverse and so different from each other that it was actually said they could have all been different languages at one point, which is mad altogether for such a small country, that we could have had 3 different languages on the one island. But then when they started teaching Irish in school, they kind of had to standardize it as well, so that everyone was learning the same thing, I suppose. And that the Caidán came from that, which is what a lot of people would refer to when they're teaching Irish as well. They wouldn't kind of just specifically teach Munster words or Connacht words or Ulster words. They go with the Caidán, which is probably mainly Connacht dialect, I would say. Would you agree, Siobhán, that the Caidán?
Well, it's a bit of a mixture on Caidán. And I think I know that there's a committee, and they're always trying to mix up to mix it up between the three main dialects and trying to give kind of equal status to all of them. So it depends, I think, on who's on the committee and stuff, and the Caidán changes every few years and stuff. But I think it's important to remember that the Caidán, even though it has come into more maybe common usage now, is technically only for state documents, but still it has affected how people teach Irish, especially, and how people write Irish. But like the spelling as well, the spelling has it's trying to cater to all three dialects. That's why sometimes when it is confusing, the spelling, it's because it's trying to cater to all three dialects, main dialects. And another thing, as well as the Caidán, I would say, of course, schooling has had a great effect, as you mentioned. And even in the Gaeltacht areas, from what I've heard, you would have teachers from all over Ireland within the Gaeltacht schools. So you might have been born and reared in, let's say, Connemara, but you might have had a teacher from Kerry or somewhere. So you have that as well. And another thing I would say is the advent, what I've heard is, as well, is the effect of the advent of television and radio, and how that has changed how people speak Irish as well and understand Irish, because then they could hear all the different dialects every single day and they got used to them instead of listening to their own local dialect, and they would have picked up different peculiarities from the different dialects. So I guess it's the same thing can be said about English as well, especially in Ireland. If you go back just a few decades ago, someone from Galway would have found it very difficult to understand someone from Dublin. But today, usually people won't have much difficulty, and that's in English. So it's no wonder really that Irish, in a sense, even though it's such a small country, you'd imagine how could we possibly have so many variations on things, but we managed to do it not only in Irish but in English too. So that's it. But that's why it varies. And when it comes to, also I'd like to mention there about Kimberly, I think you mentioned there, you asked what does Bitesize teach? So we'd be very much in line, I suppose, with at least the same. We take the same approach as Caidán would have taken, and that is a mixture of the three in a sense. So it's standardized in the sense of we're not focusing in on one particular dialect, and we embrace everyone's different dialects. So of course I have a different dialect from Owen, Aisling, you have a different dialect from me and from Owen. So we're all going to add our own stances or vocabulary, but the course itself, you could say is mostly Munster, but in a sense, but it's not strictly Munster. It's not, let's say, hardcore Munster. It's most of the terms and most of the phrases will be found in all the other dialects, and we do try and include, if there's something that's very common, like how you ask, how are you? Those vary a lot. The question words vary a lot, and we often we try to include those so that people understand the other dialects, even if they're just learning the one dialect. So we're very much open to different dialects, and the idea with Bitesize is to give you a foundation so that if you do manage to, if you do want to focus on one particular dialect, you'll have that let's say that ammunition to just focus on the one, because you have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to speak. That's the main thing. Before you focus on one particular dialect, because that is very difficult to do, I would say, unless you're living in a particular area. because even within the main dialects, there were many, many smaller dialects. So, and then add accents on top of that. So there's that's the idea with Bitesize Irish anyway. We're focusing on teaching Irish, and of course it's the one language. So it's like, I suppose, when people are learning English, it's the same language. You might say things differently in each country, but still, that being said, it's the same language. So that's our idea.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to embrace with the language as well, that there might be some varieties in dialects, and I think it makes it very interesting as well. So hopefully that kind of answers your question now, Kimberly. It's a nice thing to take interest in, I think, in the language. I love it with other languages too, that there's different accents and different words in different places. So brilliant. So I think we have 2 more questions here, and then we can take some from the comments if there are any. So the next one here is from Brian, and he is in Columbus, Ohio. So this is a very interesting question. So he starts off by saying, okay, so, well, as someone, you know, who's dabbled at the fringes of a couple of languages, this topic fascinates me. So he's talking about filler words here. So he wants to know what the kind of filler words are in Irish that people would say. So in English, you might say like, you know, things like that. So he wants to know what you would say in Irish for that. So myself and Siobhán came up with some that we would normally use. So do you want to give us your examples, Siobhán, first?
So I came up with maybe too many, because there are a lot. So of course, the first one I have here is well, and it's similar to how you might use well, at least in the English spoken Ireland. Well, so you can use that in many different ways to draw someone's attention, just as a filler. Well, that's how it's spelled. One, I suppose, it's my personal favorite. I'm not too sure. Like that's one of my favorites. But another one here, this one, I use it a good bit. I'm not sure if it's really anything, but achem, and I suppose it comes from butem in English, or at least it's the Irish equivalent. So I suppose when people are they kind of stutter a bit in their speech, well, but achem instead of butem achem. So ach, it's the Irish for both. So I'm not too sure if that's my own invention or what it is, but that's one that's handy. Better than saying butem anyway, when you're speaking Irish. And one that you hear people say a lot in Irish when speaking Irish is so. And so they might be just speaking Irish and then they just throw so in. So what you can do to avoid that is instead say marchin. So you can use marchin even when so has a function, but also when so doesn't really have a function, it's just there as a filler. Marchin. So you can just, in the sentence like that, marchin. So that's a handy little one. Another one, I guess it's a bit different. And this one here now, it's like, it can be when you're showing dismay at something. It's kind of like saying, oh, don't tell me, not again kind of thing. If you see something, oh, I don't know, the cat has knocked over the milk or something, na haber. Like don't say it. It means don't say, na haber. So it's kind of like you don't say or don't tell me, that sort of thing. So there's lots of different variations in English for that. So na haber. Of course, one that you'll hear a lot in Ireland is your man. So your man, look at your man over there. So the Irish version for that is morunne. Morunne. Look at your man. Or what's your face? I suppose it's a more international version of your man. What's his face? So morunne. And the female version of that then is I should. That's at least one. I'm sure there's more than this, but I should. Ke he should. Who's what's her face, or who's your one? I should. Ke he should. So that's another version. Another thing you hear people say a lot is when they don't know the word for something is yoke or tingamajig or tingamabob. And the Irish for that can be simply rud or rudine. Rud is the word for thing. So it's not as fancy as tingamajig or whatever. So it's just thing. Rudine is a little thing. So I guess it's closer in meaning to tingamajig or tingamabob. Like what thing is that, or what yoke is that, or something like that. That's rud. Another one, that you get people saying a lot is just, I suppose, especially when someone's listening to another person speaking, you might just say right, yeah, just so as to keep the conversation flowing. And what you can say in Irish and what's used an awful lot is take him. I understand, take him. So you might just say that just so you're saying something as you're speaking. Another thing you could say instead of take him is cacolor, okay, all right, tagama, macolor, and they're all like saying right, grand, okay, that sort of thing. And the going back to Tigam, there's another phrase that people tend to say, do you know what I mean, like, or something like that. We might hear that at the end of well, when people have said their base, and they might just say, do you know what I mean, like, digging to let me, that sort of thing, or just digging to me. Digging to me is, do you understand me? So this is kind of like, are you with me? Do you get what I mean? Digging to let me, and that's of course when you would definitely say take him. Of course, if you don't, you'd say nihigam. But that's that one. And if you want to just say that's grand, tashin tau. That's grand, lovely, tashin tau. And here's another one. If someone says, oh really, kind of like that. Oh, in orira. That's one way of saying that in Irish. There's also one that you get people saying a lot. Well, actually, and sometimes actually doesn't even have a function. Sometimes it does in English, but here are some variations as you can use in Irish. So, chunanir na rá, that's to tell the truth, literally. Chunanir na rá, to tell the truth. Gianta na fiarna, so it has a similar meaning. It's kind of also saying about telling the truth. Darira pira. So all of those are like, well, to tell the truth, actually. So that's the Irish equivalent. Those are Irish equivalents for those. And Marharlian she is like, well, it's also actually, but you might use it in a different context. It's Marharlian she. It literally means as it happens. And you can, of course, people do say in English, as it happens, I'll be going such a place, or that sort of things. When you're just mentioning something by the by or whatever, Marharlian she. Then if you want to just say like wow or gosh kind of thing, you can just say mush or musha, or I think you can also say whoosh. There's a few different variations on this, and that's kind of like say oh wow or gosh or golly, or there's 101 ways of saying it in English as well, of course. And another version would be manum. Manum, that's like wow or something like that. And that's literally my soul, manum. And then like I've got two others here now, which are more maybe for expressing surprise, to follow on from the same kind of theme we've been on. And that's wagen. That's kind of, if you see something surprising, wagen. It literally means oh virgin, wagen. And we've also got Hirkish, which is, I always think, a very funny one. It's kind of comical, and it's very good to use, I think, for kind of comic effect. Hirkish. So it's kind of like saying in English, lordy, or golly gosh, or something. It kind of sounds like that. It's Hirkish. Sometimes, I suppose it depends on the speaker as well and on context, but it's a fun one to use, I think, Hirkish.
Yeah. It can sound a bit sarcastic, almost like, oh, Hirkish, like here we go kind of a way, you know, it's a funny
exactly.
one, yeah.
That's it, it is indeed, yeah. It is indeed. Oh, that's a good one. So that's it. I think those are all of those from me. Do you have any there, Aisling?
I have a few that might be a bit more specific to Munster dialect, but there's a few that might not be. So one you hear a lot in Munster is aber, which literally is the verb to say, aber. But people say it all of the time if they're just trying to think of something. So Willisagut say, do you know aber? Like, it's kind of like when you throw like around in English, you'd say aber in Munster as well. Willisagut aber tá rudladin of, do you know, I actually have something to do, like, or whatever. So aber is used a lot, and tá isagut as well, which means you know. That's always thrown around as well. I think you mentioned and digging to Siobhán as well. It's kind of those two things, Toisagot, digging through those kind of things. And one very specific to Connemara you'd hear a lot is kinál, which means type. And you'd hear that a lot in Connemara. They'd say vi kinál, there was kind of vi kinál. So those are a few, but there's loads and loads and loads. And I think we have a blog post there for the members on that. So if those of you who are members that are interested in seeing these list of words, they're all there in the blog post. So you can take part in that discussion if you'd like. Perfect. So I hope you have a long litany there of filler words now, Brian, to keep you going. Perfect. So we're on our last sentence, or last question now from the ones that were submitted, and then we can move on to some of the ones from the comments. So this is from Daniel, and he's in Anriocht Aintahe. So hello, Daniel. And he says, Díobh, what advice would you offer to adult learners outside of Ireland beginning in Irish and with the limited opportunities to practice speaking with others as Gaeilge? So what would your advice be, Siobhán?
So I would say there are multiple opportunities online, especially in recent months, to speak Irish in such a setting as this, almost like on Zoom or some sort of live video call. So there are many. So of course, before everything, there was the pop-up Gaeltacht, which used to happen in pubs, and hopefully soon again in the future we'll have those back again, and people will be able to go to a pop-up Gaeltacht in a pub in their local city. All over these pop-up Gaeltachts have happened all over the world. So there might be one near you, or sometime in the future. But at the present, many of these pop-up Gaeltachts or equivalents have been held online. So you can find either local language learning groups online, and also you can join in with ones in Ireland, and you can have conversations there. There are also opportunities to just chat one-on-one with people in Ireland, Irish speakers in Ireland or abroad. And you can see some people looking for kind of language exchange and the like. You can find those in some groups on Facebook or on Irish language forums. But we also have a unique opportunity here at Bitesize, because we offer some opportunities to speak online as well. And that's through Bitesize Pobl. And we have a weekly Bitesize Bio, which is a live video call, and there we read out a script together, and we discuss different common phrases in Irish. But we also have some member calls as well during the week, so that way you can, even if you're not very confident in your Irish, you can get speaking Irish with others. As well as that, so I think that's one of the main things when it comes to speaking in real life. As I was saying, not much of a chance these days, but so you really are limited to Irish online. But there is now a website I would recommend, and that's pig.ie. And on Pig, you can see there's a list, and I'll try and find the link quickly there. There is a list of all the, that's it, I have it here. So there is a list of all the different online Circle language, well, conversation circles, you'd call it. So the Circle that's when people get together just for a chat. So you have those on Zoom now, and you can also find those on location as well. So do you have any ideas about that, Aisling?
Yeah, I think it's actually never been a better time to try and learn Irish, because everything is online, because we're all at home, and so many people are joining Circle and things like that. So as Siobhán was saying, there's lots on Bitesize to take advantage of. We have the Bitesize Bio, we have the Pobl as well, where you can chat to people, and you can even find people that might be in the same place where you are, that might want to connect one-on-one and you can chat. We actually had 2 new members, both from New Zealand, so they were able to kind of get in touch with each other, and they can they're on the same time zone now, so they can chat away and help each other. So that's a good way to do it on the Pobble. And also, there's a Facebook group called Gaeilge Amháin, and that means only Irish, and it's I think there's like 12,000 maybe or more members on it from all over the world. And if you ever just post in there and say, is there anyone else from wherever, and they might be happy to join and chat to you. So definitely just leverage the online resources that have kind of become so much more available now because of everything that's going on. So but yeah, definitely Bitesize does offer a lot for you if you're looking just to chat to people, and a lot of it as well doesn't have to be, you know, at a specific time. It can be whenever you like. You can join in a conversation whenever suits you. So hopefully that kind of gives you some insight anyway. So right, that was all the questions that were submitted to us. Has there been any coming in the comments that we would like to go through?
Yeah, so let's see what we have here. So we've got loads of comments. Got a mahagir fad. So we've got here one from Paul, and he's asking about if you have the letters DFH or DTR or MH, such as Nahort or Turi or Cherhin in Irish, how would you pronounce them? With DFH, you would say D apostrophe FH. The trick there is that FH is silent in Irish. So you just pronounce the D. DTR, in that case, DT. So this is called, what's going on here is called eclipses or oru. And this is when the D takes over from the T and you don't hear the T anymore. So, for example, if you had the word train, drain, so it takes over from the T, you now D instead of T. And when it comes to MH, it depends. It can be pronounced either as a W sound or as a V sound, kind of. And it depends on the word, and it depends on dialect. So, and as I was saying, a hort or a hort, or there's a few different pronunciations even of that word. And the same chure, or I'm sure, Aisling, you would pronounce those words differently yourself.
Yeah, with them, that MH now usually in Munster, it's always a V sound. It's very rarely a W sound. So that's very much a dialectical thing. So that's interesting that you bring it up based on the question we had earlier. But sometimes it helps as well if you find a word like that with MH in the middle of it. So maybe Auron, that has an MH in the middle of it, and you could type it into Tanglin and see how they pronounce it, and then you say, okay, cool, that's a W sound in that context. So Tanglin could be a useful one there. If you're not fully sure, you might want to just go on and have a look there. So hopefully that helps you a bit, Paul.
Good Paul. So that's great. So let's see. So there's a quick question here about Neil and knee. So do you have any ideas there, Aisling, when to use Neil and when to use knee?
Yeah, so Neil is always just with the verb to be. So an will, Neil, it's the negative. So tá me, I am. Neil me, I am not. An will me, am I. So Neil is only ever used with the verb to be. You'll never ever see it anywhere else. Go vistam, as far as I know. And then knee is used with all of the other verbs. So let's think now.
Ní rihim, I don't run. Yeah.
Exactly. So ní rihim, ní clushim, I don't hear. Ní ihim, I don't eat. So Neil is only with to be. Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds right. That's great. That's a very good, concise explanation. Oh, great. So that's why you would, that's it. And ní is also the negative form of is. So we had one here about, yes. So you wouldn't say Neil ben me, you would say ní ben me, because the positive is is ben me. So the negative of is ní. So ní ben me would be I am into woman.
Yeah, so with the couple there on couple. So is something may, ni something may. So it's not really a verb as such. It's a different kind of grammatical structure called uncouple. So that takes a whole kind of different structure.
That's it. And if anyone's very confused about this, don't worry. We could spin probably we could definitely spend a whole Q&A just on the topic of when to use uncouple, when to use the verb be and to and be and all of this. They're all forms of the verb be, by the way. But you know, it's not something to be to be too worried about if you're not exactly sure. So let's see. So are the Gaeilge summer schools still open? As far as I know, none of them except online.
Yeah, I don't think that the ones for secondary school students were open, but I know that there's some schools for adults opening now again in September and at the end of August. So hopefully they'll still go ahead, and because it's great for the Gaeilge to have that kind of those people coming in over the summer. So hopefully they'll still go ahead, the ones that are going on in September.
And there's a quick question here about, is it trí waddra or trí wadri?
Yeah, this is another one now that's confusing. So you can say both. So if you're saying trí waddra, you have that chevu, the H there, or you can say trí madri without the H. So I'll say that again just in case that was very confusing for Fraser here. So you can say trí waddra, which is what you've written the first time, and that's with a singular. Or you can use the plural and just get rid of the H after M and say trí madri. So they're both right.
That's good to know. I actually know that the letter was correct.
Yeah, I remember I found it so annoying when we did that in school. I thought, why can't there just be one? It's just, but it's good that we have two options.
Very good, very good. Gaeilge for fad. So let's see now. Let's see now. So it's great to see all these comments. Unfortunately, we can't get to every one of them. But let's see. So there's a question here about any language books you'd recommend, either fiction or non-fiction.
Oh, that's a lovely question. So one of my favorite ones is by Mike Deneen O'Shea, and it's called Aisling and Siobhán, which literally means house don't fall on me. And it was his autobiography. And he grew up in West Kerry, and he moved to Chicago for a few years and then came back to Ireland. And it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous story about growing up in West Kerry and what life was like there, and the good, the bad, the ugly that came with it. But the Gaeilge in it is absolutely gorgeous. So that would be my favorite book. What about you?
Well, I remember doing that for an art test for the Leaving Cert, and it's a very good book. For myself, I guess my all-time favourite is Ó Fiann an Fíorsaigh, and that's a collection of short stories from Pádraig Mac Piarais. So I'll just write the title there. Ó Fiann an Fíorsaigh. So that's one to check out. Ó Fiann an Fíorsaigh. And there's even been a bilingual version where you have the Irish on one side and the English on the other, so that some people might find that helpful, how they can read along in Irish and check to make sure that they're actually have the proper understanding. And also those stories are available online. It's very easy. It's very easy to come by, as a Aisling and Siobhán, of course. But there's so many books to recommend, so many.
Yeah,
we'll be all night. So just let's see now. Oh yes, and about getting back to the idea of Gaeilge schools. So there definitely are Gaeilge schools for partners. So I would say there's quite a few across the country. I guess the most famous, I guess, is just Gaeilge in Donegal. I'll just write that up. People know what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
there are also some. Yeah.
There's loads of them, yeah. I think there's nearly one in every Gaeltacht. So if you wanted, you could even just first see where you want to go. So what Gaeltacht you want to go to. And then there's ones, the two that come to my head now are Irecht Kirkagüine, which is in West Kerry. And then there's Daneskull na Muin as well, which is in Ring in County Waterford. And I know that there's ones in Connemara as well. I'm just not as familiar with those Gaeltachtaí, so I can't tell you the names off the top of my head, but it might just be an idea yourself to see where you want to go and then pick a school from there. But there's absolutely loads of them for beginners, all levels of people coming from all over the world.
And I'm pretty sure we have had a list of them on one of our blog posts. So I'll try and dig that up and add it to the blog post for this Q&A. So the blog post that's linked to this, so we'll update that after the call. So let's see then. So I guess we'll wrap it up for this evening. We're over the hour already. Martin, a bhí sé go híntaach ar fád a bheith caint libh.
Yeah, bhí sé go húntaach leabhart libh agus tásúla gom gur bhain sibh tainmh as. Hope you enjoyed it. So I might just put up a link here now for the free courses we have on Bitesize. So if you enjoyed this kind of interactive Q&A, there's so much more like this available on the Bitesize website. And if you sign up to become a member, there's even more. So I'll put a little link up here now where Siobhán can help me. There you go. Excellent. With the free course available and the taster courses if you want to give it a go. So tásúla gom gur bhain sibh tainmh as. Ítheamh agaibh agus slán go fóill.
Slán tamil. Slán.
Slán.